You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast.
geldi. Ricardo Quaresma! Ricardo Quaresma! Ricardo Quaresma! Mükemmel bir gol ama! Ricardo Quaresma! Quaresma ortayı yaptı. Sekti. Gol! Gol! Gol! Gol! Gol! Gol! Maç boyunca durdu, şimdi attı. Abubakar attı. Abubakar! Abubakar! Abubakar!
Hello, Black Eagles. A lot to unpack and digest. In this week's episode, it feels like it's been a while since we last spoke, and I guess it has been since last week, so a lot of games have happened in that time span. We've had 3 matches. First, there was the uppercut in Adana, where we ended up losing 4-2 to Adana Demirspor. Then we had a little bit of a bright spot when we won 2-0 in Konya, and then last night we had one of the most memorable games in Europe, but not for good reasons. This is going to be remembered as one of the greatest comebacks in the Conference League's young history, I'd say. But again, we aren't on the good end of the stick. We are on the receiving end of that comeback, as Beşiktaş give away a 2-0 lead at home at the Beşiktaş Tüpraş Stadium, the inaugural match for the new sponsor at least. And Beşiktaş lose 2-3 to Lugano from Switzerland. A match that we had to win, a must-win game for us after a bonus point in Brugge 2 weeks ago. We really had to get the 3 points here against Lugano. I said it beforehand on Twitter or on X or whatever you want to call it nowadays, that this was a crucial game for us, a must-win match. And it looked like everything was going to go accordingly, even though the football wasn't good, and that we really had to rely on Abubakar again. I mean, I really thought we were bad the first 30-35 minutes, but then we scored after the goal. We kind of took more control of the game in the first half, and we scored relatively early in the second half. Then Valentin Rosier got sent off, and for inexplicable reason, you just see that despite the fact that you're 2-0 up, you're playing at home in front of your own fans, still the team just doesn't have the mental prowess to overcome something like that, and they just lean back, keep inviting the pressure. And I have to give credit to Lugano throughout the game. They looked like an extremely well-organized side. Oliver Zessiger already warned us for that. Also the coach, clearly a well-coached team. But in terms of their efficiency in the final third, I would say up until those final 10 minutes, definitely not anything to write home about. Their final pass, everything just kind of looked a little bit off. But even against a team like that, you see you can get in real trouble when you just don't retain possession. And that was one of the biggest issues, I thought, not just at 2-0 and a man down, but also in the first half, in the first 35 minutes. Like our midfield, and I've been saying this to my friends for a while now, and I've been criticizing Amir Hadjametovic, not yet on the podcast, actually. I don't think I've really mentioned that yet, but I've been criticizing him a lot recently, because I really feel like the number 6 of Beşiktaş needs to dominate the midfield, and Amir is I thought he started off the season quite well in the European qualifiers with some really neat long distribution and all that kind of stuff. But since the league started up and since we've been playing a little bit tougher opposition, I feel like he's been drowning, especially now with Jetson out. Amir just isn't pulling his weight. Salih isn't really pulling his weight either. Salih's better than Amir right now, I'd say. And the thing with Amir is that I guess you kind of like his open play performances kind of get masked a little bit by the fact that he just pick up an assist on the regular from set pieces, because unfortunately that's one of the few ways that we are able to create chances by corners, if you can even call that creating chances. That's but yeah, Amir is for me a disappointment. I think he was good when he came last season in January. He had a little bit of time to get used to the team, which is normal, but then after that we went on a really good run and he was part of that. But this season I'm not seeing that from him. I'm not seeing the dominant 6 that we need. I'm not seeing Joseph in his prime, for example. Joseph, when he first came, was really instrumental and gave us that midfield supremacy, I thought. And Amir just isn't doing that. For me, our midfield is our biggest weakness. I don't think that people who say, oh, but we suck because we don't have a 10, I do not agree with that. I don't think that is the issue. I think the issue is that our midfield is like a wet rag. Amir, Salih are not able to dominate. Jetson is the only guy that's able to dominate the opponents. He's the only guy that's able to recuperate the ball constantly, win duels, pick up the ball, run with it at his feet, create trouble for the opposition. You never see Amir do that. You rarely see Salih do that. They just aren't bringing it. And in the build-up, we always rely on Rosier for some reason. Last season, Masuaku was extremely important, but building up from the back, Rosier has become our focal point this season. We're always going over the right side, rarely over the left side anymore. And maybe that's because Masuaku missed a couple of games. But still, our midfield usually just gets skipped, and when it doesn't get skipped, they pass mostly lateral or back to the defenders, back to Koli, back to Bailly, and then it just goes back to Rosier, and it goes, there's no proper build-up. And you can argue, okay, a 10 would solve that, maybe, but the problem of the midfield battle not being won is not going to be solved by that. Like, I genuinely think that Amir and Salih right now, you could probably get away with one of them, but not both of them, I have the feeling at the minute. It's just not good enough. We've seen some good stuff from Ox. He wasn't very good yesterday, I thought. Last 2 games, maybe a little bit disappointing. My friend Kartal said, that he kind of thought that had to do with the fact that he got subbed at halftime against Adana Demirspor, where in the first half he was arguably our best player. And that's kind of also one of those things where I'm really getting the sense that at least part of the dressing room is not on board with Şenol Güneş at all. He's had his spats with Masuaku, with Rosier, apparently now with Rebic. I get the sense that he's having something with Ox, because there was a report that he had to have a meeting with Ox before the game yesterday. And I don't know. I just get the feeling that Şenol Güneş is doing a poor job at managing the team. Very much reminiscent of how he was doing, in my opinion, a poor job at managing the team in the last 2 seasons of his first stint. I think he did a fantastic job the first season. He did a decent job the second. Then the third season, things started going wrong. And don't get me wrong, I don't think he did a perfect job all the time. I think even in those first 2 seasons, he he didn't do a very good job with guys like Matej Mitrovic, with Alexander Milosevic, guys you will probably now think, oh, but those guys never made it, so he was right about them. Yeah, but you have to understand that a footballer's career is sometimes hinging on moments, sometimes hinging on moments of a coach putting faith in you, in a coach trusting you and giving you the confidence to build yourself up. And if you miss that window, your career can, that might have looked bright at one point, like a Matej Mitrovic, for example, can go completely downhill. Pedro Franco is another example. Pedro Franco, initially, I think we all loved Pedro Franco. And then something after the Brugge game kind of felt like he got kind of scapegoated, dropped, his confidence dropped, and his career has gone off the rails since. He's gone back to Colombia, didn't even manage to do well there. So a player that once looked really like a bright shining star can really extinguish rather quickly if a coach, just stamps out that fire. And I've seen that a lot with Channel in the past, I think, at least. I mean, I'm obviously not privy to the training sessions, but I've so often thought, oh, this is a good talent, and then they show good things, and then they make a mistake, and Channel doesn't forgive. And for some reason, Channel has always kind of had that mindset of certain players can make mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake, but they have endless credit. Take Tolga Zengin, for example. How many mistakes was Tolga allowed to make? Alexander Milosevic made one mistake, I think it was in the game, well, two mistakes, in one game against Kasim Pasha. I don't think he played again. Matej Mitrovic missed the penalty against Lyon. Don't think he played again. Maybe he played a few games, but you could tell that it was over for him. And sure, maybe Matej Mitrovic wasn't the biggest talent in the world, but he still cost us 4.2 million euros. That was a heavy investment from the club, and it's up to the coach, who is the manager, who needs to manage the talents. I've said this. Go back 2 years when we were doing the podcast. It's the coach's job to get the most out of the players, and to get the most out of the funds that the club has invested in players. If you buy a player for 4 or 5 million euros, which is a lot of money for Beşiktaş, the coach of Beşiktaş, it's his job to galvanize that player. And how many times have we seen that Channel just doesn't do that? Look at Ante Rebic. Wasn't a very expensive player in terms of transfer fee, but he's an expensive player in terms of wages. 2-year contract, 2.5 million a year. It's 5 million investment. And Ante Rebic is a player who's coming from AC Milan, who's a World Cup finalist with Croatia. He has certain ability. You can tell it when he played. He's played in every game he's played now. He's created at least 100% scoring opportunity. You cannot say that Jackson Muleka, that Milo Trasička, that those guys are playing amazingly. You cannot say Onur Bulut is playing amazingly. So why is Ante Rebic not getting more opportunities? He got one start against Trabzon, got subbed at halftime, created the 100% chance in that first half we had, the one for Getson, that's on Rebic's pass. And he gets subbed at halftime, hasn't played since. Serjan Dikme comes out after, a couple days ago, said, well, apparently there's a sort of a falling out between Rebic and Şenol Güneş before the, I don't know, I think the Adana Demirspor game, I think. They were, the lineup was made known. Rebic saw he wasn't starting. They were handing out the yellow training jackets for the reserves, and Rebic said, well, I have back pain, I'm going to the physio. Now, if that is true, we have to take it with a pinch of salt, of course, because Serjan Dikme is going to report what he is told. It's not necessarily the truth. I'm not saying he's lying, but there's perceptions that get created on purpose, always been the case. and Serjan and other journalists are sometimes used by people to put a certain narrative out there. That doesn't mean the journalists are lying, but for example, Channel can put that narrative out there. For example, Burak can put that narrative out there. For example, somebody at the club can put that narrative out there. Sometimes a player puts a narrative out there. I'm just saying, not everything that appears in media, not everything that is reported is 100% true. But let's take it on the surface. Let's take it. Let's say that's right. Huh? There's no excusing faking pains, faking an injury, or maybe exacerbating pains. Maybe he was feeling pains, but it's perfectly bearable and he could play or whatever. But he's like, if you're not gonna give me a chance, if you're not gonna line me up, then I'm not gonna put my body through this. Somewhat understandable. We've all been in situations in our lives where maybe we weren't feeling 100% up to it, but we did it anyway because we knew people were relying on us, were depending on us. If you feel sick in the morning, you have to go to your job. Some people who feel sick, they're like, I'll go to the doctor, give in a sick note, and I'm not going. Other people are like, I'm sick, but I'm gonna go in anyway. And when you feel valued and appreciated by your employer, you are much quicker going to be inclined to say, you know what, I'm just gonna bite through the pain and I'm gonna go to work. If you don't enjoy your job, if you don't like who you're working for, and you're like, you know what, I don't feel good, I'm staying home today. So I'm not excusing it, but it's a perfectly human response. People will say, it's not professional. Maybe that's true, but have you ever been in that situation before? I'm sure that a lot of people who are listening to this podcast, a lot of you will be the type that go to work regardless if you're sick or not. There's gonna be people listening that are like, you know what? Fuck the guy. I'm not going. And I understand both sides of the equation. I think that's what we have to try and do. There isn't an innocent here. Rebic is at fault. Also, Channel is at fault for not utilizing him and not giving him the chances he should be getting. And it's the same is true for other players. And look, that's what I'm trying to get at, is that Channel is not currently running a happy dressing room. It didn't stand out to me. It was pointed out to me yesterday. But when Aboubakar scored yesterday, there was very little celebration by his teammates. I'm not saying that the teammates don't like Aboubakar. Aboubakar is a loved individual in the dressing room. He's a leader. But there's something wrong in that team. I think something we had last season, I think when we went on a good run, it was, of course, a lot of the time Aboubakar bailing us out with his wonder goals. But you could tell that there was a team spirit, despite the fact that Channel came in and had his little issues with Rosier, with Masuaku, with Romain Saiz, which we cannot forget. The team spirit was still good, it seemed like, and maybe that's credit to Valérien Ismaël, who built that up in the first place, and the team spirit and the cohesion stayed, but it did not carry over into this season. We saw it a little early on in the season, I thought, against the games against Dynamo Kiev and stuff, and in the European qualifiers, but something has been lost, and I believe that's in part due to the fact that new guys haven't really settled because the coach hasn't been treating them fairly. That's led to disgruntledness. There's also disgruntledness over wages with Cenk and Salih. There's a lot of issues, but a lot of those issues, obviously the wages for Cenk and Salih, that's not something Ansel Güneş, that is the board, who should have sorted out their contracts last year when they had agreements in place, should have signed it. Doesn't make any sense why they didn't. But The other issues, the camaraderie, the lack of camaraderie, the players that are, in my opinion, not willing. I don't have the impression that, for example, Arthur Masuaku is fully motivated. I don't see the same Masuaku as I saw last season. Rosier, despite the fact that he's had issues with Channel and despite the fact that he got sent off in this game, I do have the feeling he's giving it his all every game. And he's one of the guys that consistently this season has been playing at the most consistent level, I think, and working hard and hardest. He's always very active, and he's one of those guys that I feel is willing to put his head in front of it. But I don't know if others are. I mean, I thought Bailly was good yesterday until those final 10 minutes where, I mean, I'm not blaming Bailly for it. It's a collective failure. I thought he was good yesterday. I think Colli's is really good. I really like Colli. So that back line, Masuaku, Colli, Bailly, Rosier that played yesterday, on paper is a really strong back line. But yeah, I think our midfield is just not living up to it. But then I think part of the dressing room channel has lost them. I think it's hard to argue against that. There's just too many telltale signs that point towards disgruntledness, not getting along 100% with the coach, all that. I mean, also, I didn't pay 100% attention to it. I saw it, I believe, in like a replay or something. But Aboubakar, again, when he was celebrating his goal, he did the same thing against Konya, went to Burak. And I understand, okay, Burak is working closely with the strikers, working closely with the attackers. But Aboubakar and Şenol Güneş, you would imagine, have a very good bond. Where is that? You know, you'd expect him to run to Şenol. Maybe I missed it, maybe he did, and then afterwards went to Burak. I'm not sure, but got the impression that, yeah, not all is well there. And, you know, of course, our fans have been yelling for two months. How long has the season been going now? For the board to resign. And I have said already, I think that there's a lot wrong with this board. I think there's some very questionable decisions that have been made. Also, the tardiness of the transfers. I think, for example, the signing of Daniel Amarte. I'm not on the bandwagon of haters, but I think giving Amarte a 2 million or close to 2 million a year, when you then end up signing Bailly as well, doesn't make much sense. There's a lot of whispers that some people within the club are making money off of this stuff. Now, look, I'm not going to go into that kind of speculation because I think, well, I guess I just did, but I think that's stuff that's easily said, easily put out there without any proof whatsoever. I see people mention it constantly, but then I've never actually seen anybody say it's that guy. Pointing, well, that guy, he is the one that's pocketing money. So it's easy to say, oh, there's people pocketing money, but it's all just, I mean, at least I think, got the impression, it's all just speculation, right? And kind of malicious speculation, if it is speculation, because then it's just purely malicious. However, I mean, if people know stuff and they know who, they need to come out and say it. They need to stop pussyfooting around and being little dicks and just put it out there. Who are the people that need to be banned for life from the club? Because we had this issue, or this perceived issue, under the previous board as well, with Fikret Orman, where a lot of people were saying Umut Güner and Mahmoud Yazıcıoğlu and all those guys, they're pocketing money. Then people were mentioning names. And I hope to God that if that is true, we will never see those. Well, Mahmoud Yazıcıoğlu, I think, died anyway. But Umut Güner, for example, if it's true that he pocketed money, hopefully we never see him again, right? Yıldırım Demirören, he pocketed money on Tabata, on Sivok, on Sivak it was proven because the club disclosed, Beşiktaş disclosed the transfer fee for Sivak, like 2 million euros higher than Udinese disclosed it. So where did those 2 million go? So there you have some sort of proof that maybe it wasn't Timur, maybe it was someone on the board, but he's the one who signs off, so he's ultimately responsible, that there was shenanigans going on with the finances and that certain people were purposely extracting funds from the club. I haven't seen that type of clear proof under the Oman era, but one has to wonder, with all the money coming in that period, where it all went. Obviously we had high wages, but still, you have to wonder. But now, there's still those things being said. And I feel like it's kind of becoming, that transfer doesn't 100% make sense. Somebody must have made money on it. I think it's an easy thing to say. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying I'd like to see some proof. That's all I'm saying. So to the board, I think they did a poor job this summer. I think we all think that. I don't necessarily think that the transfers we did were bad. I don't think Rosier is a bad signing. I don't think Ante Rebic is a bad signing. Talking purely on paper, I don't think Bailly is a bad signing, apart from the fact he's injury prone. Same with Ox. I think individually, if we look at the transfers we did, they aren't bad signings. The planning was horrible. The timing, everything. The planning, the timing, everything. We knew, or we strongly suspected already, Redmond wasn't going to come back. That dragged on for over a month. It's their job to fix this kind of stuff. They need to know going into the summer window, this, and that needs to be done. And they don't, given the money we spent, the fees we spent, we gave 5.5 million for Rosier. We paid pretty high wages for Bailly. We paid pretty high wages for Amartey. We paid high wages for Ox. We spent a significant amount of money this summer. And maybe some of that money, like for example Onana. Look, I'm not going to jump on that Onana hating bandwagon. But the money we spent on Onana, a player that is completely not utilized right now, he played a couple of minutes last night. But that's the first time he's gotten minutes in weeks. We paid 4 million euros for him. That is not a small fee for Beşiktaş. Beşiktaş should not be paying 4 million euros for a player that is not going to be a starter. So that is an inexcusable transfer. I don't care who wanted it. If Channel wanted it, then that's on Channel. But also on the people who are making the decisions, because they are ultimately the ones signing off. And they need to make sure that a player that costs you 4 million euros and a 1.5 million a year, which he's supposedly on, those types of players need to be starters. I am not saying Onana doesn't have potential and that Onana couldn't be a good player for us in the future. But if he is a prospect, he shouldn't be on 1.5 million. He should be on 500, 600k. And he shouldn't, well, he can cost 4 million, that's fine. If he's a really good player and he's a hot prospect. But he shouldn't be making more money than your starters. That is asking for trouble. Then, of course, guys like Salih, who I don't think deserves what he's asking for given the way he's playing. But of course he is going to expect more money than the peanuts he is getting right now. He's getting like 300,000 euros. And I think I made it clear in the beginning of the episode that I am not very happy with how Salih is performing. But he's starting every game. He should be making 800, 900,000 at least. Even if his level right now isn't what we need it to be. Now, I don't think Salih should be a starter, but of course with the Turkish foreign limit, we have limited choice. But they could have spent that money, that 4 million on Onana, and that 1.5 million a year. Maybe add a little bit. Try and sign Salih Özcan from Borussia Dortmund. then you have a Turkish player. That would potentially solve your issue. There are other Turkish players out there that we could have signed for that money. Okay Yokuşlu, for example. He's older. I'm not sure if you want to spend that money on him, but I'm just saying, like, we are forcing ourselves in a position where we need to play guys like Salih, guys like Onur Bulut. I have no problem with playing Cenk if he's fit, but he's not. We saw it again yesterday, he's not. And Cenk, the way he is right now, conditionally, physically, is not adding much. But the same can be said about half the team at the moment, because we are playing absolutely rubbish football. So, to conclude, yes, the board has done a lot of stuff wrong and they should be taking responsibility. I know they have taken responsibility in the sense that they have cleaned up the club financially to the best of their ability. They are paying the wages. They are sorting that stuff out, but they have had so many failures at this point, not being able to sell Ersin. The fee we got for Ridvan was disappointing, I think, although, you know, if you look back at it now and given what Rangers have gotten out of him so far, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. But there's been players like Larin. Like, I understand Larin wasn't very keen on signing a new deal, wanted to strike up a signing bonus, blah, blah, blah. But still, that's a failure. And there's been so many failures from this board, unable to extend contracts, unable to sell players, unable to sign sponsorship deals in a timely manner, unable to finish transfers. How come okay, well, I understand we had, coming off the back end of a Champions League season, we had more money readily available. But last summer we finished our transfers in a good time. This season it was horrible. And the worst part is I never got the sense of urgency. I've said this before. I never got the feeling that this board even had the slightest inclination that maybe stuff wasn't moving fast enough. So this board, they have made too many mistakes at this point. They have done some good. I will give them credit for that. But the situation right now with the fans, it is unsustainable. And if these people truly care for Beşiktaş and care for the community, they need to realize that at the moment they're doing more harm than good, and they need to allow for exceptional elections to take place and for a new board to be appointed. Now, that is that. The board needs to go. Agree with the fans on that. But there's a lot of the fans who are also sticking their head in the sand and are only pointing to every time we play bad, every time we lose, it's Yönetim istifa, Yönetim istifa. But Şenol Güneş is responsible for how this team plays. You can say we are missing a number 10, we are missing creativity. It's fine. I agree with you. We miss a creative player, even though Gezal is back now, but we still miss creativity. That much is clear. But there is no excuse whatsoever for the abysmal level of football that Beşiktaş have been playing this season. The players we have, I am going to name them: Mert Günok, Masuaku, Bailly, Koli, Amarte, Rosier, Amir Hadjametovic, Salih Uçan, Getson Fernandes, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Milot Rasicka, Ante Rebic, Cenk Tosun, Jackson Muleka, Vincent Abubakar. Those are some of our players. Are you going, like, I'm sure some of you will say, well, Jack Muleka isn't very good, and this guy isn't very good, and that guy isn't very good, and that guy is... I forgot about Zainuddinov, who I think is a good player. Are you going to tell me that that is a team, that is a collection of players that cannot at least play okay football? Are you going to tell me that the standard we've been watching recently, the inability to retain the ball, the inability to string 3 passes together, our ball circulation is rubbish. Our midfield is non-existent. Why do we always build up over Rosier? Like, is Rosier the new Quaresma for Şenol Güneş? Where's the football? There's no football. What are they doing in the training camp? What are they doing in the training sessions? What is going on? These are all footballers of a decent level. And they cannot retain possession. They cannot dominate possession. They cannot do... Even when we were bad under Şenol in the 3rd, 4th season, we'd dominate possession. We'd struggle to create chances, but we dominate possession. Now we are just giving away the ball constantly. We are conceding 3 goals here, 4 goals there, 3 goals there. We've conceded against Trabzon 3, against Adana Demir 4, and now against Lugano 3 goals. And it's not like we have a bad defense on paper. Masuaku, Colli, Bailly, Rosier. That is not a bad back line. It's a collective failure from this team. They cannot defend as a unit. I said it against Dynamo Kiev when Shaparenko scored that goal. Where is our midfield? He has 25 meters, a radius of 25 meters around him where there's nobody putting pressure on the ball. What is that? I don't think... Guys, come on. When have we last seen this from Beşiktaş? Okay, we've had some games in the past years where we thought this is the worst I've seen them play in like 10 years, in 15 years, whatever. Like a half that is terrible. Like I've said it on the podcast. These are the worst 45 minutes I've seen. But I think this is the worst stretch of games I've seen Beşiktaş play in at least a decade. I don't remember us being this, what's the word? Inept, impotent. I mean, we are impotent. It's just Abubakar who pulls stuff out of nowhere. Hey, he did it again against Konya. These goals that he scored here, the second one again was pure Abubakar. The first one, okay, that was a good cross and he headed it. But and last season it was like that as well, where it was the Abubakar show. He was pulling some sort of rabbit out of his head every game. But at least last season under Güneş, there was, you have a ceiling and you have like the lower limit. I think our lower limit last season was a lot higher. Now we're just falling through the floor. Like it's like our floor is made out of cardboard and we're just falling into the basement every time. Because it's wet cardboard. It's not even sturdy, it's just wet. Like somebody pissed on the fucking floor. And you step on it and you fall into the basement. That is our that is our level right now. Our ceiling is not very high because we are playing horrible football. And our ceiling only has a little bit of a spike every now and then when Abubakar decides to pull a rabbit out of his head. But other than that, it's abysmal. It's like these players, like the team looked at what Galatasaray and Fenerbahce were doing this summer and like, you know what? I'm gonna take the year off. There's no point anyway. No point in even trying. Let's take the year off. That is how it feels right now. These players are responsible. Şenol Güneş needs to get more out of these players. Like, I'm not saying it's 100% on Channel. Like, obviously these players share part of the blame, because they're the ones who are playing like shit, and they're professional players that earn millions of euros and that have to hold themselves to a much higher standard. And even if they don't get along with the coach, they still need to play for the fans and play for the money they are making. But I do think Şenol Güneş has a large part of the responsibility for the abysmal performance we've had this season. And I think Şenol needs to go. I'm sorry, I wasn't a fan of him coming back. I was willing to give him my support, and I was very resentful of Şenol for how things ended the first time around. I think I've forgiven him now. I feel sorry, because despite the fact that I resented him for the first period and how it ended and all that, and all the talents he wasted, I still love the guy. And when I see him in the post-match press conference yesterday, defeated, I feel sorry, because he is a legend. He won 2 titles for us. Some of the best memories that the younger fans will have had of Beşiktaş is from Şenol Güneş, and I understand the loyalty toward him. He is a legend, but none of that is undone by if he leaves now or whatever. You know, that all still remains true, and those memories never go away. And as I have grown older, it's been, for me at least, I have a kid, and it's easier to put things into perspective. Obviously, I'm upset, right? But I didn't lose any sleep last night, whereas before, when I was younger, I would lose sleep. I would feel horrible for a week after something like this. I'm pissed right now. I can't say I feel horrible. I don't feel horrible because Beşiktaş has cost me so many gray hairs over the years, but it's given me so much. I have so many wonderful memories of Beşiktaş, and that they have given me in my life. You know, the 100-year championship with Sergen scoring against Galatasaray in the last minute. That's my fondest memory, perhaps. But also the championships with Şenol, the championship with Sergen, even the seasons that you don't win, but you still have those memories of players like Quaresma. His first stint at Beşiktaş was without a title, don't forget, but I still have wonderful memories from that time, because being able to watch Quaresma play for Beşiktaş is a wonderful memory for me. So it's so many things, many beautiful memories I have that still make me make me love the club and appreciate it. And the dark periods, which we are going through a dark period right now, it doesn't make me miserable anymore necessarily, because I hold on to those good memories. And they make me, they give me a sense of nostalgia. Nostalgia is the greatest drug. You don't need to do actual drugs, just nostalgia is enough. Trust me, I'm big on the nostalgia high. Yeah, you have those beautiful memories, and I know that beautiful memories will come again. So yesterday was bad. Was one of the worst European performances ever. And unfortunately, it probably means our European campaign, despite only being 2 matches into the group stage, is going to be really tough to salvage something from it, especially given the football we are playing, especially going away at Bodo Glimt. If we win in Norway, which I highly doubt at this point, but if somehow we manage to pull an Abubakar rabbit out of our hat, and our defense doesn't decide to completely collapse, or our team doesn't decide to completely collapse, and we get a win there, if we somehow manage to pull that off, then we're back in it. I don't think Lugano will get a lot of points against Brugge, and against I don't think they will get points in Norway, so we can still do it. But look, this was a must-win game, and I think realistically the chances of us qualifying now are slim, and then it kind of quickly goes towards this being a lost season, and I've seen many of those in the 2000s. Every other season seemed like a lost one, but the good memories that we have and that we will get in the future, whether it be next year or in 3 years or in 7 years, or like Fenerbahce now, they had to wait 10 years. You know, they're having good memories. They're making good memories now, and hopefully for them, they don't shit the bed. I wouldn't care if they did, but but that's the thing. Like, don't linger too much on these moments. It's just what I'm saying. Don't let it ruin your week. If your day is ruined by stuff like that, I understand, but don't let it ruin your week, guys. New stuff will come, better days will come. Trust me. I've said this before. I've said this in the Abdullah Avcı era, and then we had that amazing championship in 2020, 2021. And there will always be moments like that that make these moments worth it. And these moments, these lows, I've said this before, make us appreciate those highs so much more. Because without the lows, the highs are worth nothing. So sometimes it's kind of maybe a little masochistic, but moments like yesterday kind of make me appreciate the good times more. And in a weird way, that brings a sort of perverse, I wouldn't say enjoyment, because I didn't enjoy yesterday, but the aftermath, the reflecting on it, what I just said, I guess, the lows making the highs worth it, and there will be highs in the future, but we have to get through this right now. And I think, I'm not a fan of calling for heads, but I think we've come to a crossroads where both the board and I think Channel needs to go to. I don't think that. I mean, look, you can fire your coach, you can't fire your team. That's just not possible. That's just not financially possible. We have to do it with these players. Obviously, a lot of them will probably be gone by by next season. But we need to look ahead, and we also need to salvage the players that actually have value. You can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater like Fenerbahce have been doing year after year after year. 14, 15 new players every year. It worked out for them this year, but look how long has Ali Koç been there, and how many times have they done that? Every summer they basically do it. They throw out the baby with the bathwater, and Ali Koç is a billionaire. We don't have a billionaire sponsoring our transfers, so we can't do that especially. It didn't work out for Fener until now, but definitely won't work out for... That's just not something we can do. So we need to bring in a coach that is able to rehabilitate some of these players that have clearly grown disillusioned with the coach. So we need to bring on someone new, someone who doesn't always have to scapegoat people. I mean, if we look in Turkey right now, I think the most viable candidate is İlhan Palut. Çağdaş was a viable candidate as well, but he signed for Beşiktaş a couple of weeks ago. I think İlhan Palut is the best option, but I don't want İlhan Palut to come if this board is going to be in charge. I want a new board with a proper plan who can just set out proper lines and get it all done properly, and then a new coach needs to come. I don't think that bringing İlhan Palut in with this board is going to be good, because, and that's also one of the things that I'm a little bit disappointed by is the Burak Yilmaz quote-unquote project, the Gökhan Inler quote-unquote project. I like the idea of an ex-player who has decent connections in Italy, especially in Switzerland, in England. becoming director of football. I like that idea, having someone like that, a professional, not somebody who used to work for Pasolik. You know? Not some random guy that used to work for Pasolik. I don't want that. I want someone professional that knows the sport, that played professionally. I want someone like that. Or at least someone that is very knowledgeable. So I like that idea of Gökhan Inler becoming the sporting director. I like the idea of Burak Yilmaz learning under Şenol Güneş's wings and ultimately maybe taking over as coach. That was, I think, the idea. Have Şenol Güneş do it for 2 years, 3 years, then transition to Burak. Obviously, if we're going to fire Şenol Güneş now, that transition to Burak becomes a problem. Because whoever is going to come in next is more than likely wanting to bring in their own staff. If it's someone like Ilan Palut, a young coach, then he is not going to want Burak around, because then that will be a threat for his own job. That is not going to work out well. Don't need to explain that to anyone, I think, why that is not a good idea. So the problem with firing Şenol is also kind of you are discontinuing the plans from Burak. And Burak is potentially could potentially be a great coach in the future. I think he needs at least another year or two, at least you would think another year or two under the wings of another coach. Maybe go out and coach another team for a while. So I don't know. Maybe, I mean, look, we've seen it now with Emre. He basically jumped straight to coaching at Fenerbahce now. Then he went to Başakşehir. Now he's going to Ankaragücü. See it with Arda. He's doing it at Eyüp. Okan Buruk. Look, maybe Burak, this 6 months under Şenol is valuable, and now he maybe hopefully can go and coach a team for a while and then come back in a couple of years. But look, I mean, I'd obviously prefer, if we bring in someone like Ilan Palut, that's going to be a long-term thing. So that's something that I really I think we are at a point where Şenol needs to go, but I don't like the idea that also means Burak will go. I also don't really like the idea that the board going probably means that the whole Gökhan Inler plan for sporting director is probably gonna be off the table, because the new board is probably gonna want to bring in their own sporting director or whatever, or more than likely put some sort of board member in charge of it, which is so fucking anyway, I think this was more a rant episode than it was really about the games. Quick in a nutshell, I thought we were kind of unlucky in Adana. I mean, after the game, Şenol said Mert was injured going into the match, and then suddenly you understand why he conceded 2 goals from distance that he always should save. I felt we were a little unlucky with them scoring 2 Sunday shots, as they say. I thought we played actually well in the first half against Adana. Obviously, they were missing a lot of players. They were missing like 7 starters or something. Some due to suspension, but also others just because they were signed after the original date of the game. So they had a lot of missing players. So it was really a good opportunity for us to get the 3 points there. I think we started that game well. I think we played a good first half. We were unlucky to go down 1-0. We were unlucky to go down 2-0. But then if you afterwards hear that Mert was injured, then again you have to say, look, that is on the coach. Why are you starting with an injured goalkeeper? I mean, it's always going to be a what-if scenario, but what if Ersin would have just started that game? Then maybe you don't concede those stupid shots, and then you actually have a good chance at winning the match. Then in the Konya game, suddenly that good football, that's a big word. Suddenly that somewhat promising signs of some sort of cohesive football that we saw in the first half against Adana Demirspor before Şenol ruined it with his subs. I didn't see much of it in Adana, in Konya, but then we scored a really lucky goal at the end of the first half, and then Abubakar pulled the rabbit out of his hat in the second half, and we have a relatively comfortable 2-0 win away from home against Konya, a team that is traditionally a difficult opponent for us away from home, although you have to say that they aren't very impressive this season. And I was hoping that was going to kind of be a turning point, but then you see the football against Lugano in the first half, the first 30-35 minutes. It's really not good. You're winning 2-0. You get a red card, but I really don't think that getting a red card should ever be an excuse for such an utter and complete collapse. I think the best thing you can do when you are leading a game 2-0 and you go down to 10 men, you're playing at home, is just play it simple. Just pass the ball around. You're still 10 men. You're still 9 outfield players on the pitch. They have a man advantage, yeah, but you have the advantage of a 2-goal lead. Make them run after the ball. Instead, what did we do? Win the ball in our own area, near our box, and boot it up the field, straight back into their feet, so they can come for the next wave. And you just keep doing that time and time and time again. And that's like it's like the beach. The water's gonna go up. You know? In the morning the water goes up if you don't push it back. I don't know, man. I think it was so... I was watching the clock, I was like, oh, it's minute 80. Okay, if we can last just a couple more minutes, and then literally like 30 seconds or like 45 seconds later, we conceded the 1-2, and I was like, oh, that's too early. If you concede that 1-2 in like the 88th minute, or the 90th minute, or the 86th minute, the 87th minute, then you're like, okay, you know what, we conceded, but we can... Now we just have to try and kill the game. Try to draw some falls out, you know, take the ball, go to a corner, fend it off, or just pass it around, something. But no, every single time it's just boot up the field, back to them, up they come again, and then Onur Bulut, who came on and after Rosier got sent off, it's like he wasn't standing there. The guy that scored the 1-2. Every time on the left is just like walking past, just breezing past Onur like he's not standing there. It's like, I can't believe some people think he should have started over Rosier last season. Like after his first game, it was like everyone was like, "Oh my God, he's so good!" Oh. No, he's not. He can't defend. Jesus. I feel like I'm ending on a sour note. No, let's end it on a good note. Look, guys, I said it before. These lows make the highs worth it. Trust me, it'll get better. It'll probably get worse before it gets better, because we've got Galatasaray in like 2 weeks, and then we're gonna get like Fenerbahce in a couple of weeks after that. So it's probably gonna get worse before it gets better. But you never know. We might, sneak a win and. Okay. That's unfortunately probably gonna be the highlight of our season this season if we get a win against them, because like it's like, yeah, we're gonna struggle to qualify for Europe. I hope that if Chanel stays on, if he doesn't get fired, he's going to take the cup really seriously. I hope he's going to smooth things over with some of these players, but I think it's too late. If he does get fired, I hope whoever comes to replace him is going to take the cup really serious. And I hope somehow we can manage to end in the top 3, top 4. I think we are fortunate that our rivals for those spots aren't very good. Beşiktaş here are shit. They're probably not a threat at all. Adana Demirspor aren't really impressing me that much. Trabzonspor are shit. So, 3rd, 4th place. If we can sort our shit out, it should be fine. Obviously, top 2 is not gonna happen. It's gonna be a long season, but hopefully there's gonna be some bright spots for us to pull ourselves up on, and we just have to hope that a new board comes, the right people come, and yeah, That's all we can hope for. And in the meantime, I think the only thing we can do for the fans that go to the matches, that go to the stadium, protest without breaking stuff, without throwing stuff, just chant. And yeah, I think that's the only thing we can really do, is make clear that this is not acceptable, that the way they handle things this season as the board is unacceptable, that the way Shinel is handling the team is not acceptable, that the team players, the way they are playing, the level they are getting is not acceptable. I think that is what we need to end on. This was a long episode of me ranting. If you stuck it through until then, thank you very much, and hope to see you again next week under better circumstances. So we have Istanbulspor on the weekend, so I don't know. Let's see you next week. Go Beşiktaş.